very informative. I'd like to ask Dr. Vandre, you've talked about 10 milligram THC unit dose as kind of okay, one dose. No, it doesn't produce impairment. Could you tell us what dose would produce impairment, and what are the adverse effects as that increases, as that dose increases? Can it even lead to death, or what are the adverse effects as the dosage increases?
Sure. So when I say 10 milligrams seems to be a good dose, it's been tolerated well in Colorado, and it's been tolerated by the handful of healthy adults in my lab who've been administered it. 10 milligrams is also an acceptable dose and a therapeutically recommended dose for dronabinol in the U.S. So 10 milligrams is tolerated, doesn't mean it's tolerated by everybody. So there are a lot of individual differences and variability in response to cannabis and THC. For example, individuals with a family history of psychosis or with psychosis have a much more exaggerated response and are more likely to experience adverse consequences than a healthy adult without that history. With respect to the types of adverse consequences that can occur with cannabis or THC ingestion, most commonly it includes at higher doses nausea, anxiety, paranoia, vomiting, hallucinations, dry mouth, red irritated eyes, and in some cases an actual acute psychotic state where people kind of dissociate and act in very unusual ways. Those are all time limited. They typically resolve within a couple hours, sometimes faster. Again, it depends on the route of administration. So inhalation of the drug, the duration of effects doesn't last as long as if you eat it. So again, but I can't say with any certainty, you can't say that about any drug, that one particular dose is going to be okay for everybody, because people have allergic reactions, people can have greater sensitivities for a variety of reasons.
And can I ask, is there research on the susceptibility of certain types of people to THC? And this is maybe a bit of a sensitive question, but is there any research on whether certain races or ethnic or groups have a different rate of susceptibility?
So the data right now will tell us that females tend to be more sensitive than males. I'm not aware of any research that indicates that there's any racial or ethnic predispositions that are reliable. There are hereditary differences, again, where we see very reliably people with a family history of psychosis, be that bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, things like that, tend to have exaggerated responses to cannabis and THC. And there may be other genetic heritability factors related to expression of the endocannabinoid system or drug metabolism that also can contribute to that, but they haven't yet been identified.
Time?
But you can get one quick one.
Very quickly, to Mr. Campbell, smoking is a very inefficient vaporizer. You said the device you have is very efficient. What's the percentage of THC ingestion that results from the vaporizer you described? And is there a danger, you say you control the one dose very carefully, but is there not a danger, especially with high percentage of ingestion of THC or impact of THC, that people will just keep ingesting? I mean, they could ingest up to 200 milligrams with one of those devices at one sitting?
Yeah, so they could consume up to 200 doses, but I would compare that, I'd use an analogy from alcohol. You could buy a 24 case of beer and consume all 24 beers if you so chose to. Probably wouldn't recommend that course of action. To your first part of the question regarding the percentage of THC, that varies highly depending on which formulation. So if you look to our high CBD formulations, there's very, very little THC in that product versus with some of our higher THC products. You could be in the 70% range. But the important distinction to make is percent concentrations versus milligrams of THC, as Dr. Avandre pointed out. So as currently the legislation is limiting the percent concentration within oil, we're suggesting we move that to milligrams per dose to make it more effective and more accurate to protect Canadians.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, that completes